Yes guys, welcome to the Fantasy Football Fix Game Week 35 live stream. My name is FPL Nacho, and as always, we will be covering off all of the big talking points going into this weekend's Game Week 35 deadline, which is going to be unusually a Saturday 1:30 PM UK time deadline, so we don't have to panic in the mornings because of the whole coronation that is going on with everything, so we have got plenty of time on Saturday to assess the situation and get a bit of an understanding of what we want to do with our transfers. But of course, in this live stream, this is your perfect opportunity to ask me any questions that you have regarding your team, regarding general transfers, and of course, general FPL. And if you want to ask any personal questions, that's always a opportunity as well. So first and foremost, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. If you are getting involved, please let me know in the chat. Let me know where you're tuning in from. And importantly, let me know how many points you scored in Game Week 34. I'll come on to my team in a bit, where I'll cover off exactly how I got on, where I'm ranked, and my transfer plans for Game Week 35. But if you can let me know how you got on in Game Week 34, I'm always interested to know if anybody smashed the 100-point barrier. I saw a lot of that over on Twitter this week. And also as well, if you can drop a like on the live stream, it's always appreciated, just to push it out there for those managers that are maybe struggling right now and need a little bit of inspiration. Maybe this live stream can help them out. So if you can drop a like, it is always appreciated. Cheeks that I can already see is in the chat. Hope you're doing well, buddy. As always, I'm doing very well myself. Lovely to have Friday and a long weekend ahead of us. And Tom's asking the questions already about, is anyone taking a punt on a Man City player? We're going to be covering off on a on a fair few punts ahead of Game Week 35 and beyond that I really think is worth keeping on for later on, because I think this is the time to make those punts if you want to. What I mean by a punt is maybe those 1 week options that you don't need to look at your team long term. You just want to have short term returns of players that have incredibly high ceilings. And I think if there is ever a time to go for these sort of players, it's now or in the next few game weeks. So it'd be super interesting to know what kind of players are on your radar right now, and whether you do have a similar sort of watch list to what I have ahead of Game Week 35 and beyond. Cheeks saying regarding that he transferred in Grealish last week, which was a bit of a punt. I think Grealish, in regards to actually a long-term transfer, is probably the best of the bunch of the Man City midfielders. I think they're a great 1 week punts, but Grealish is a great long-term hold if you want to be looking in that direction. And Rio's also saying, hi Nacho, is it worth a free transfer to replace Jota by Alvarez? Now, of course, the situation right now with Jota is a little bit murky. Definitely is carrying some sort of knock. It has been confirmed by Klopp, but it doesn't mean that he's completely ruled out of the games. I do think his game time is going to be questionable, though, but the same can be said for Alvarez. So I think your decision comes down to, first and foremost, what does the rest of your team look like? Do you view Alvarez as a good option for a 1 week punt? Because of the 1:30 deadline and Man City kicking off at 3 PM, there is a solid chance, if you are active in the Twitter community and you follow some of the big accounts out there could be some Man City team leaks before the deadline. If that is the case, and we do get confirmation that Alvarez is starting, I do like the sideways move from Jota to Alvarez. However, what I would say to you is, those sort of moves are very much 1 week in isolation. You need to remember that you are going to be having a Game Week 36 team which will have Alvarez in it. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? That's how you kind of perceive him as an FPL option. I personally view him as a player that you bring in for Game Week 35 as a single Game Week punt, and then move him on to a Newcastle asset in Game Week 36 to really focus on that double game week. And if you're following that similar plan, then I really do like the move, but it is going to come down to potential team leaks before the deadline. Otherwise, I think you're just going to be selling a minute's risk in Jota for a minute's risk in Alvarez if we get no confirmation right now. So, without further ado, guys, let's get started with my current team ahead of Game Week 35. We'll talk through my transfer plans, how I got on in Game Week 34, and then, of course, we will come back to any questions that you guys are asking in the chat. So please do continue to put them in, and I'll be answering them throughout the live stream. So let's get started with how my team is looking for Game Week 35. Okay, guys, so here on screen you can see my current starting 11 and bench for Game Week 35. So just to give you a bit of a recap on how I got on in Game Week 34 and my overall rank. I Let me start again. I scored 116 points in game week 34, but I took a -4 point hit. So my net total was 112 points, which I am more than happy with. But like a lot of FPL managers out there, it was last minute heartache for the team. I was one of those that had Luke Shaw in the team, and he ended up scoring 1 point in that fixture against Brighton. However, prior to that handball that he gave away, and 2 minutes before that, he ended up getting a yellow card and then gave away the penalty, which wiped out his clean sheet and bonus points. And at one point, he was on for a 9-point haul and he ended up scoring a 1-pointer in the space of 5 minutes. And that is exactly why FPL sometimes can be one of those things that you just need to take a step back from and not associate yourselves with the outcome. We were basically 30 seconds away, a headed clearance from a corner from Luke Shaw racking up 9-point haul and most likely an additional 10k green arrow on top of what I already scored. So again, for those that are worried about the outcome this week, please do not get yourself too tied down by it, because this is a perfect example of how massive swings can happen on such small moments in games, and that was a perfect example of it there. So please do not get yourself down about it. I am one of those that experienced probably the worst swing of it because I lost the clean sheet point also on Rashford and Fernandes. It is what it is sometimes. Once you made your team, you just set it up and you hope for the best, and these moments do happen. And unfortunately, it happened at the back end of the season where it feels a bit more personal because you don't feel like you have enough time to claw back that potential gain that you would have got because we only have 4 game weeks remaining. So ended up being a small green arrow for me. I moved from 56k to 52k. So considering where I was a few weeks back, let me just give you a bit of an idea. In game week 20, I was 400k and I'm now 52k. So I'm really happy with that. In particular, in game week 28, I was 260k and now I'm 52k. So I'm really happy with how the last few game weeks have gone. Of course, a bit of luck along the way, some good decision making. All in all, if I could get myself in the top 50k, considering how bad my season has been from a probably decision making, little bit of poor judgment, little bit of luck along the way, I will take that every day of the week. And I think a lot of you who are in that position should also be happy with that sort of rank because it's a very competitive season this year. And of course, with Haaland being in the game, it's been very difficult to make those huge gains on the overall rank. And the main reason for that is because captaincy has become redundant. Years gone by, yes, I know that we had the season where Salah was pretty much a perma captain, but we had the opportunity to go for a differential captain each week and not get necessarily affected so heavily by such a hugely effective ownership player like Haaland. So that is why I'm happy with that rank if it was to stay in how it is. So let's talk about my team ahead of game week 35. So quick coffee to get me through this. So goalkeepers, I'm in a bad place with goalkeepers. I have one free transfer and 0.3 million in the bank, but I don't have the funds available to get myself to Edison. I dodged a bullet by not taking a point sit to bring him in last week, and I don't feel like I necessarily need to use a free transfer to get him in this week. I would expect him to come back in the team, but of course there is a bit of a question mark there in regards to it, and City's defence still continue to leak goals. I know they kept a clean sheet in the second half of the game week 34, but I do still expect them to concede those really leaky goals. And against Sam Allardyce's Leeds, we know at least they're going to be up against a very resurgent team who are going to be fighting tooth and nail. So I don't think it's going to be a walk in the park from a performance perspective from Leeds. I think Leeds are going to be really putting up a test. It's just whether Sam Allardyce can really instill any sort of tactics into their team in the space of a few days that he's been in charge. So Iverson right now is getting the nod over Raya. Now, do I back the Leicester defence? Absolutely not. Do I back the Fulham attack? I don't rate them as high as others, but it is worth noting that they are still scoring a few goals. Raya is the other option available, but however, because I'm playing Mo Salah and Trent Alexander-Arnold, I feel like my only real way I want to play Raya is if I think this is going to either be a 0-0 or Raya is just going to have one of those mad games where he's going to accumulate loads of save points in the bonus points and he's going to get one of those rare 4 or 5 pointers even though he does concede in the game. But right now I'm going for Iverson just basically to chase maybe a differential clean sheet that no other manager is going to have this game week, because you're in a bad place if you're starting Iverson like myself. Defense, I feel, picks itself. Trent, Trippier, Estupinian. Now, I see a few people discussing the decision between Trippier versus Luke Shaw. And I absolutely get it. I do think Shaw is still an okay option. I think the face of it is, I don't think either are great options. I think Newcastle will concede against Arsenal because I rate the Arsenal attack. The only time we've really seen Arsenal struggle was against Man City, really. Otherwise, they've still been scoring goals week in, week out. And I would expect them to do the same against Newcastle, because Newcastle themselves, even though they've posted good numbers, haven't been keeping a lot of clean sheets over the past month or so. But Trippier is in based on an ownership perspective, and he does offer that attacking potential as well, because his numbers have still been consistently good, even though he has been blanking. And Estupinian is in just because of the fantastic home fixture that he has against Everton. Moving into the midfield, again, they all pick themselves. I'm playing a 5-man midfield. It is how I've built my team to be designed between now and the end of the season, most likely. And in terms of transfers for that midfield, this is where it becomes very difficult for FPL managers between now and the end of the season. A lot of you watching right now probably are in a position where you have quite a few of the players that I've got. And if you don't have those players, then you have a similar combination. So you might have McAllister instead of March. You might have Grealish instead of Fernandes. Those sort of small variations in the team. But on the face of it, you're in a similar boat to me where you can't be selling any of these players. Double Brighton midfield, you can't sell them because they have a double in 36 and in 37. Mo Salah, you could be brave and sell him, but with home game this week and another decent home game in a few game weeks' time, very tough to move away from him and feel like you need to justify that move. And then the double Man United, double in game week 37. Yes, Man United looked poor against Brighton, I thought, but I still fancy them to pick up a goal or two against West Ham. And the same will be said as well if you have a Man City midfielder. Very difficult to move away from Jack Grealish, knowing that if he is benched in this week, will come straight back into the team in game week 36 and beyond. So midfield transfers, I don't think there's going to be much of them between now and the end of the season. It is worth noting. Forwards, Haaland and Watkins up front. That is obviously the route I'm going for, because I have Greenwood as my third forward and he's going to get 0 game time, as we know. But that was part of the strategy to free up funds elsewhere in the squad. Now, as I discussed, midfielders, I don't feel like I'm going to be making any transfers between now and the end of the season unless we get injuries or I want to take a big punt in the team. So it's all about that second forward slot in Watkins. I'm never selling Haaland unless he did get an injury. So the Watkins position becomes the one where maybe I could use my free transfers to start playing around with some 1 week punts. So as I said, rolling the free transfer is a good strategy this game week. But we are in a position, as I said, where if I roll my free transfer, what are my next moves? Could I bring in a defender, maybe a Man City coverage? Absolutely, that could be a door that gets opened. Maybe something like a Trent down to an Ake could be a consideration from game week 36 and beyond. But I do think that second forward spot is up for debate. Now, as I mentioned, the Man City game is at 3 p.m, the deadline at 1:30. So there is an opportunity for us to get some Man City early team news. So this is how I paint the picture right now. If we get no Man City team news, the team stays how it is. I roll my free transfer, we move on to game week 36. And I would expect this team to do okay this week. Nothing spectacular, but okay. If we were to get a scenario where Haaland was benched and Alvarez was starting, then I would sell Watkins to Alvarez and I would put the captaincy on Alvarez in a heartbeat at home against Leeds. I think that's the perfect opportunity for someone like myself who isn't at a rank where I'm trying to protect it, but I'm also not at a rank where I am completely chasing. I feel like Alvarez is the perfect opportunity where if you're going to bring him in, you might as well captain him and really chase those double-digit returns that could happen and hope that Haaland doesn't come off the bench and gets a full rest against Leeds ahead of Real Madrid. The third option, Haaland and Alvarez start. Then I need to question whether Alvarez's value is worthwhile. And I do think rolling the transfer is then more of a viable move than buying Alvarez. I just feel like when Haaland is in the team, he naturally just brings all of the big chances, all of the XG in his gravitational pull. Meaning Alvarez, although he could do very well, doesn't feel as attractive as a move because I wouldn't put the captaincy on him. So we definitely would just be a 1 week punt hoping that he can deliver some differential returns. So that's the kind of way I'm looking at my team right now, guys. No news, I keep Watkins. Haaland bench and Alvarez starts, I buy him and I captain him. And then if we get a situation where both Haaland and Alvarez start, it will be a very late minute call, but I most likely will roll the transfer and start Watkins, as we need to remember Aston Villa have scored in every game under Unai Emery apart from that game against Man United. And Watkins, although he's had a little bit of a slump in returns, I don't think that he is a bad option overnight. I still think he is a fantastic option, and we know his minutes are going to be fantastic between now and the end of the season. So let me know your thoughts in the comments, guys. I've been rambling on about my own team for a little bit, so let's come back to the chat and I'll answer some of those questions, and then we will move on to some differential attackers that I really do think we need to consider for our teams if you are chasing rank or in those mini leagues, for example. So let me have a quick sip of this and then we'll get into the comments while I am reading them. So Paul Gibbons, hope you're doing well. Regular watcher, so I really do appreciate it, mate. Good evening, Nacho. I'm stuck with what to do this game week. I have Veltman out injured and may consider a sideways move to a Stupinan, but will cost a -4. I would need to move Jota or Watkins out. So Paul, I imagine your squad isn't good enough for you to just simply bench Veltman this week and bring in a defender. Otherwise, I imagine you would have mentioned it. So, and you're saying about rolling, I would need to know what player would come in for Veltman as your defender if you were to bench him. Because if it's a solid defender, then you could just roll your transfer and reassess in the following game week. If you were to take the -4, I think Veltman to a Stupinan is a wise move because I think his Stupinan's minutes is going to be pretty solid between now and the end of the season. And he does offer attacking potential alongside back-to-back doubles in 36 and 37. And of course, with the -4, that's really not ideal. And taking a -4, you do one of two things. You either sell Jota and bring in Alvarez if we get news that he's available and starting, and you accept that Alvarez is a 1 week punt, or you sell Jota or Watkins, whichever route you want to go down, and you bring in Isak or Wilson, knowing that you're going to be having them for game week 35 and for game week 36. As we need to remember, even though Newcastle have a tough game against Arsenal, there is a chance that Gabriel is going to be ruled out for that game alongside Saliba. And if we do see a combination of the new guy, and I cannot pronounce him, so I'm not going to embarrass myself, and Rob Holding at centre-back, I would expect Newcastle to score in that game. And with Wilson and Isak being involved in these Newcastle attacks, it's just getting on the right one then. But I think that is the route I would go for if you're looking at more of a long-term move for your teams. Lipop saying, good evening, people. I hope you're doing well, mate. Newty saying, best differentials this week. Newty, if you stay around for the next 2 minutes, I'll be moving on to the best differential attackers for game week 35. And some would say game week 36 as well. So make sure you do stick around for that one, as we've got a complete slide dedicated to that one. I think that really will benefit you there. And Iceman saying, is Botman and Wilson enough from Newcastle for game week 36? Well, of course, you are missing a hugely owned Trippier in your team, so that is of course going to damage your rank if we were to see a situation where Trippier was to get a haul. And I do think he will be a bit of a captaincy option for some managers out there who preference expected minutes versus, you know, the goal scoring potential of the attackers. I don't think that is necessarily a bad thing for you having those two options available. It always comes back to the same thing. Who are you selling if you want to bring in that Newcastle player? Because you probably would be in a similar situation to myself, where the players that you have in your team look fantastic for this week and beyond, and they don't necessarily feel that attractive selling them. So let me know who you would sell to bring in these Newcastle assets, because otherwise, Botman plus Wilson is more than enough. The question is then, what route would you go for? Would you get in a Trippier and double up on the defence? Or do you have the luxury of selling another forward and bringing in Alexander Isak alongside Wilson? So you need to let me know in the chat there. Michael, hope you're doing well. Good evening. And Foots is saying, is it Foots? Is saying Alvarez. We're going to come on to Alvarez in a minute, as spoiler alert, he does fall under the differential attackers division that we are going to be discussing about. And Michael saying, 120 points, no hits, had Luke Shaw and De Gea. Michael, I feel your pain there. Even more so the fact that you had De Gea, that is killer. But Stupid and clean sheets are always nice. Oh well, McAllister came good. Rashford and Matoma rank is at 1 million. Michael, more than enough potential there for you to have a fantastic end to the season. So hopefully you do finish off with some strong second second. Strong green arrows between now and the end of the season. That would be awesome to hear how you get on. And Sadki is saying, make a wildcard. Fortunately, I don't think I'll be able to build a wildcard team on this stream in particular, but it's something that we can re-look at later on in the stream if I do get an opportunity to. But off the top of my head, although I know a fair bit about FPL, I don't know if I could build a wildcard team right off the top of my head, but I will try and do so later on once we have gone past this. And Paul saying Botman or me. Paul, is that in regards to who you'll be selling for your player? Let me just quickly check it out, buddy. So Botman or me would come into your team for that situation. So if I remind myself, me, tough fixture away against Liverpool. So I don't think that's necessarily the best move. Botman, I don't think it's necessarily a bad player for you to come into your team. So it comes back to the same thing. If you view Botman as not necessarily a good option, you don't really want to double down on that Newcastle defence, then I think Veltman to a Stupinan is a nice sideways move. Get yourself the Brighton coverage between now and the end of the season. And then I think you need to ask yourself, what route do you want to go down? The Alvarez move is going to be completely dependent on Man City team leaks, and we may not even get them. So do you want to give yourself that headache, or do you go for Isak or Wilson, bringing them into your team knowing that you have got them for the next 2 game weeks? That's the decision you need to make, and what kind of manager you are, and whether you want to have the stress of the Alvarez minutes or not in game week 35. And Cheeks is saying, I think I'm rolling my 1-free transfer. Consider replacing Watkins with Wilson, but doing that ahead of the Newcastle ask him doesn't feel an essential move this week. And Cheeks said, I'm in a similar boat. It's not a move that I've even considered right now. I think Wilson and Isak's minutes are quite difficult to predict. I would much rather just have the Arsenal game to get a bit of an understanding. Maybe we do get an idea that Wilson gets 30 minutes and Isak gets 60. Or they play alongside one another. Just gives us another game to maybe assess the expected minutes of them in the following game week. And just gives us that little bit of cushion to make that final judgment. As once we go in, I think there could be big swings between Isak and Wilson. It always is the case in FPL, unfortunately. So guys, while we answer the questions, please do keep them firing in. I'm going to move on to the next section, which is talking about differential attackers. And a few players that I really think, if you are chasing your mini leagues, if you're chasing overall rank, they should be a consideration for your transfers this game week, and some of these might even be worthwhile for the next few game weeks if you really fancy their attacking number. So let's get right into that now. Okay, so we got a nice mixture here of both midfielders and attackers, and you can see on your screen here we are looking at Tottenham's Son, and honestly, I think it's probably the first time Son has been in any of these live streams. It's been so depressing to see Son basically completely ruled out as an FPL option this season because of his price point and of course the form that he's been in. He's a shadow of the man that he was last season, pretty much an essential pick in our FPL teams last year alongside Harry Kane. He has become a redundant asset, and you can see that with his live ownership being at only 2%, which is mad. But of course a price bracket of 11.5 makes him an incredibly hard player to fit into your team alongside the likes of a Mo Salah and a Haaland. Just not viable for our teams this season, but maybe his time is coming. Phil Foden back on the radar off the back of his long-term injury. Some would say long-term injury that he suffered. Back in the Man City minutes, back amongst the goal scoring. Could he be an option for our teams? Alvarez, we've touched on him a lot, and we're going to go in a bit of detail about him in a minute. And Callum Wilson as well. Now, these are all, as I would say, quote-unquote differentials, but it's worth noting we will be touching on a few assets as well in this discussion as side-by-side comparisons. For example, Wilson versus Isak based on the numbers over the last few game weeks. So, first and foremost, let's focus on Son, because he is a very, very difficult player for you to buy, and that is why I think he is one of those that is going to be incredibly niche to certain managers out there. So, Son's numbers, these are based on post-World Cup, so game week 17 to game week 34, and that's relevant to all of the players here. 0.32 XG per 90 and 0.15 XA per 90. Now, we need to remember, this is over a phase of Conte and the recent appointment of Ryan Mason, and in between that, Stellini, I believe it was. So it's been a bit of a mad run for both Spurs and Son, and we haven't really seen an opportunity of any consistency in that Tottenham team. Now, over the last 4 fixtures for Son, I just want to give you a little bit of a small sample size. Again, we can't read too much into it, but times have changed in the short term for Son in particular and Spurs. So these might be some relevant numbers for those that are just focusing on the very, very recent games. So over the last 4 games, Son has posted an XG of 0.69 per 90. So basically double that of his season total post-World Cup. And also an expected assist of 0.17 per 90 minutes. So basically the expected assists have stayed the same over the short term, but the XG has doubled. Now, is that just because they've played against certain teams that have allowed the space behind them, like Liverpool, for example? Maybe. That is perfectly a viable conclusion to come to regarding Son. However, I do start to think we're seeing a little bit of a system change under Ryan Mason. And they're allowing Harry Kane to drop deeper and really link up with the old school tactics that they had with Son running in behind, like we saw so much last season. We need to remember, Ryan Mason is there just to simply get them playing and getting results on the board. He knows the team so well. He's been there for a long time. He knows the players and what systems work. And I do think that Spurs are going to be a really nice differential if you want to make that sort of move from now into the end of the season. Crystal Palace at home, I honestly think, is an amazing differential captaincy if the likes of Haaland were to get benched. Away against Aston Villa, of course, is a tricky game. Brentford at home, followed by Leeds away to finish the season. I think if you go for Son, he is a hold between now and the end of the season. Now, you're probably asking yourself, how the hell do we get Son into our teams? Well, it would be at the expense of Mo Salah. And of course, selling Mo Salah with a home game against Brentford, followed by Leicester away, then Villa at home with a season ender away against Southampton. It sounds mad, and I do agree. It is going to take a very brave manager to sell Mo Salah to bring in someone like Son, who is only 2% owned. But when we look at the underlying numbers for Salah over the last 4 game weeks, for example, you can see here, expected goals is 0.71 per 90, and his expected assists are 0.04 per 90. So he's basically tying Son for expected goals per 90, but his expected assists are right down in comparison to Son's numbers. So what we are seeing with Mo Salah is still incredible unexpected goals per 90 numbers, and he's always going to remain that. He's of course a penalty taker as well, which is a big factor to consider. But I do think if you want to go really chasing, a Mo Salah to Son move, I know that sounds crazy, could be the ultimate brave, differential, crazy madman FPL move that maybe some of you are just after this game week. Those that are maybe having a bit of fun, chasing those mini leagues, I do feel like it could be one of those that you could go for and really double down on if you are a brave manager. I'm not one of those, but I want to clip this and maybe just play it back after a few weeks to remind myself of Son going off against Crystal Palace. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. That one is a little bit rogue. Now, let's come on to some more realistic transfers for our teams. First up, Phil Foden. As I mentioned, I'm expecting minutes for Foden in game week 35. We should get some Man City team leagues. If Phil Foden is confirmed to be fit and starting, and the likes of Jack Grealish is on the bench for game week 35, then you have a conundrum. Do you go sideways from Jack Grealish to Foden, knowing that it probably is going to be very much a 1 week punt? Because I think minutes-wise between now and the end of the season, Grealish does exceed Foden's minutes. But if you're one of those that is thinking, I just want to jump on an asset each and every week and just play it like that, because I think that's a strategy definitely managers can play, I think Foden is a brilliant option. Expected goals per 90, 0.32. Expected assists, 0.26. It's just getting him on the field for Man City, which is the really tough one. And that's why I really like this move, Grealish to Foden, if we do get that team leak. And he's only 1% owned as well. So if he does get those points, you are getting all of those points. He gets an 8-pointer. Whereas if Haaland got an 8-pointer, you're basically gaining 0.01 of that point. If Foden gets an 8-pointer, you're probably getting 7.8 of those effective points, which is going to be huge on your overall rank. Now, of course, short-term numbers, he's played 24 minutes in the last 3 games, so we can't come to any conclusions because he's posting ridiculous numbers, 1.2 XG per 90, 1.5 per 90 XA, but this is based off 24 minutes in isolation. However, we know Foden does have that high ceiling to score big, and I really like the Grealish to Foden move if you were looking for a 1 week punt in those teams, and the same's going to apply for Alvarez. I think Alvarez might be a little bit easier for some managers. And the reason why I say that is because I think there's a clear path of 1 week punts if you want to go down it. I've said it before. Watkins to Alvarez this week, if Alvarez is confirmed starting in Haaland's bench, that feels like an amazing upside pick. Then Alvarez to Wilson or Isak in game week 36 to target the double game week feels like a really nice move as well. And then in game week 37, you jump off the Newcastle assets if you want to, and you get yourself on an Arsenal asset. Maybe a Gabriel Jesus to finish the season off away against Nottingham Forest and at home against Wolves. I really think that is a strategy that some managers might take, and one that I am considering right now, as I've discussed in this stream. Alvarez's numbers, we know when he plays for Man City, his numbers are a joke. 0.58 expected goals per 90. His expected assists are really low, but again, when we're looking at forwards, I want that forward that is hogging all of the chances and all of the XG. And Alvarez does tick that box, but it's going to be dependent on whether Haaland starts or not. I'm a little less bullish on Alvarez if Haaland starts alongside him. I want Alvarez to himself as a forward in game week 35 without Haaland. And last up, Callum Wilson. He's mainly on the screens here because his ownership is so good at 7.8% and he's been in such fantastic form. His numbers are a joke. XG per 90, 0.76. XA per 90, 0.18. Really, really solid underlying numbers. Now, when we compare that to the likes of Alexander Isak, Isak's underlying numbers, XG per 90, 0.54, so slightly less. And expected assists are not on my screen right now, so I will find them for you. Expected assists, 0.18. So basically, Wilson tops him for expected goals per 90 and matches him for expected assists. But what I would say is some would argue the minutes for Alexander Isak are going to be better than Wilson's, but we don't know that. We don't know that exactly going forward because Wilson has been in such fantastic form. So again, it comes down to what FPL manager you're looking for. If you were to check out the Fantasy Football Fix heat maps over on the site, I really do recommend it. You will see that Isak's is very spread, with the main touches being in the left side of the field. Wilson's is a joke. It is just a massive red blob right on the penalty box and in the 18-yard box, which is really promising for those that are considering him, as he literally is just on the pitch to score goals and stand in between the posts. And that's always what I want from an FPL option. So all of these I love. Son is a crazy one that you might want to go to, but it's only for the brave managers. Foden I really like, but I don't like it long term because you basically are going to do Grealish to Foden and then you probably want to go back to Grealish. So I don't like the hop on, hop off. I love the Alvarez move because you're basically doing Watkins to Alvarez, and it feels worth it because then the following week you'll do Alvarez to a Newcastle forward. So you feel like you're having a nice progressive structure in place. And Wilson would be part of that plan, but you can go early on him if you want to. So let me know your thoughts in the comments, guys. Let me come back to some of the chat as I've been away for a little bit. And I do want to kind of catch through some of the questions I got asked earlier on. So let's do a quick fire here. Sokar saying bench one of Shah, Trippier, Dallo, Estupiñán or McMessi. Love that name there. Bench one? At the end of the day, you have to start McAllister and Estupiñán, and I think Trippier over Fabian Schär. So it's a straight shootout between Fabian Schär and Dallo. I most likely would bench Dallo because Schär does offer attacking potential in that team, and I probably would just double down on that Newcastle defence. Dallo as well, minutes I couldn't sit here and guarantee you as well. Sell or keep Jota, it's going to be all about who you plan on buying. I do think there is a potential for Jota to miss out because of the knocks that he's been suffering. So because of that very reason, I think selling him probably is the right move long term, and you just accept your losses a little bit. Sam Garner saying start short or Trippier. I personally am starting Trippier this week, but I understand some might be more bullish on the Man United clean sheet rather than the Newcastle one. I just feel like Trippier does offer the attacking potential in that team. I know he's not had him recently, but the numbers are still good. It's worth noting. And Tezza saying, I also need free hit team for game week 37. Tezza, if you've got a free hit for game week 37, then don't worry. I'll make sure when we get to game week 37, I will have a slide for you planned in the live stream. So surely that's enough of a reason to make sure you hit that subscription button and that notification bell, as that will be definitely a slide that will cover off. But of course, because it's a 1 week punt move, You don't need to plan for it right now. You can just do that in the actual game week in isolation. Sam saying, if Alvarez is starting over Haaland, do I free transfer Alvarez in for Haaland and captain Alvarez? No, I would not be selling Haaland for Alvarez, and I wouldn't recommend anyone doing that because you are basically just selling Haaland to then need to buy him straight back in the following week. And what I would also say is Haaland could come on for 20 minutes and score a hat-trick. So there's no situation here where you sell Haaland in my eyes. Shari saying, have Edison, Iverson, thinking not want drama with Pep. Thought transfer to De Gea. I personally would just not use that transfer and I would just start Edison. The worst case scenario, Iverson just gets auto subbed in for Edison this week. And Paul Gibbons saying, as always, Nacho, thank you for the insight, for the ideas. I would most likely to roll unless Alvarez news comes out and I have remembered to keep an eye. Yes, exactly that. I think that's the move that is a lot of managers are going to do and one that I will as well. A guy, what a great name. What do I do here? Got Edison, Grealish and Haaland. Got Botman, Trippier and Isak. Third attacker Watkins. Does he reply to chats? What do I do here? What is the question? Hang on, let me check. So, you're saying here, what do I do here? For me, you're in a fantastic position. I think you have the best three-man City. Maybe some would argue Edison isn't, but I still think he's a good option. So you're locked in with your Man City. I like it. And you're locked in with your Newcastle. I think you just accept that you basically have to do Botman out and then Watkins out to bring in Isak alongside, bringing Wilson alongside Isak. I think you just stick to what you got here. I don't think you need to chase to get Callum Wilson in your team, as it's going to require a lot of surgery, 2 transfers, maybe 3 transfers, and then I don't think it's worthwhile at all. Iceman saying, Steele, Shaw, Trent, Stones, Botman, me, Bruno, Rashford, Matoma, March, Grealish, Han, and Kane, Watkins. I will sell Watkins to Wilson in game week 36 is enough. Watkins to Wilson. Yes, I like that move. Absolutely. I think your team's looking great for this week. And then next week, you can make that move. Yes, I am in agreement. And Kane this week, what an amazing differential he will be for you. I am very, very jealous of you there. Oh, Cheeks, so thank you for throwing in the predicted points there for Wilson. Really do appreciate it, buddy. Michael, thanks for the live stream. Thanks for the live stream. Well, excellent. No words at all, Michael. And Calm saying, I'm either doing Jota to Alvarez or Jota and Shah to Wilson and Stones or Ake. Still haven't made up my mind. So the reason why I'm a little bit... You're going to be selling Shah to bring in Wilson and Stones or Ake. I don't mind those moves. I think you're in a position right now where naturally the Alvarez move is very much a one-week punt and dependent on whether we get news on him. The Jota and Shah to Wilson and Stones or Ake I do like, because although you're selling a Newcastle defender, you're getting that upside pick in Wilson, and you're also getting yourself a Man City player for the good fixtures and also the double in 37. So yes, I like that, but it's worth noting the Alvarez one is going to be very dependent on news. So I've been chatting. Let me come on to the predicted points for game week 35, as I really think this does help some of you guys with your transfer deliberations. I know it does clear my mind sometimes on the little kind of decisions that we need to make in our team. And again, if you do enjoy the stream, guys, please do consider hitting that like button. It's always appreciated. We always try and get 50 likes. I know it's a lot to ask, but if you can, it's free to do, and it is always much appreciated. It just shows me that you are enjoying the stream, and if it doesn't go up from 15 likes, then I know I might be doing a bad job and I might need to change some things there. So obviously it is free to do, guys, so I would massively appreciate it. And I would usually put in a captaincy poll for this, but I really do think that a lot of managers are going to be naturally going for Haaland because of the amazing home game against Leeds. So I don't think we need to justify doing the poll this week on the chat. But if you do want me to run a poll, guys, let me know and I will get it involved just so you can get a bit of an idea on what the general community are doing. Sometimes it can help you with decision making. So we might as well use the poll to your guys' advantage. So let's get the predicted points up on screen and then we can answer some more questions and cover off any last few bits. So here you can see the predicted points for game week 35 in isolation. Again, it kind of speaks for itself on the graphics, so I won't be going through them all in detail because they are just there for you to get a bit of an understanding of which players in each position are expected to do the best. But there's no major surprises here. Brighton, with their great home fixture against Everton, they have a lot of fantastic assets this week. Steele leading the way for goalkeepers, Estupinan leading the way for defenders, Dunk also their fourth best defender. We've also got the midfielders in both March and Matoma with 4.9 and 5 expected points for them. No forward though for Brighton, but of course we really don't know who is going to be starting with the likes of Welbeck, Evan Ferguson potentially, even like an Enciso or Undav can be deployed as the number 9, so we don't really know which forward is the one to target for Brighton. Could you go Kepa? I would never go Kepa again or any Chelsea asset, but he is looking good for predicted points this week. But really, guys, going Kepa is just a mad move, and I don't think it is even worth the stress, because I do expect Chelsea to lose against Bournemouth this weekend, and that is a Chelsea fan speaking. I honestly don't expect anything from them against a Bournemouth team who are flying right now, and also in a position where they are still scrapping a little bit. Plenty to play for. Chelsea clearly have nothing to play for, so I really do think that is going to be a Bournemouth victory there. In terms of the rest of the team, forwards, no surprises. If Haaland starts, you put the captaincy on him. 9.7 predicted points is outrageous, but Kane looking like a fantastic alternative. And if you are in a position where we find out Haaland is getting benched, I love Kane as a differential captaincy shout. We know his minutes are going to be guaranteed. We know that he is on penalties, and I do think Spurs are playing a bit more free-flowing football, even though they are conceding a lot of goals. That's not a problem when we own the forward in that team. It's all about, can they look promising going forward, and are they putting the ball in the net? And right now I'm seeing good things from Spurs, even though the results aren't necessarily the best for them as we speak. Salah, the other deliberation as well, 6.1 predicted points. Could he get a little bit of a rest? I think that's the big question right now. The minutes for Mo Salah have been quite considerable. Just to give you a bit of an idea right now, he has played 83 minutes against Fulham, 90 minutes against Spurs, and that was part of the double game week. He's then played 90, 90, 80, 90, only 25 minutes against Chelsea. So he's played quite a lot of minutes in a very short space of time. And with the return of a lot of the attackers in Darwin Núñez, Diaz, we got Gakpo in the mix now, of course. There is a potential there for Salah maybe to have his rest in this fixture. Now, I'm not saying he will, but I am just saying they are playing Saturday, the 6th of May against Brentford. And then they do have quite a considerable rest, it is worth noting, up until the 15th of May. So actually, looking at that time frame, looking at the amount of space that they have between game week 35 and game week 36, maybe it is a case of Salah just playing all of the minutes between now and the end of the season. That could be a possibility, but still a good option if you own him, and a good captaincy option if you want to go down that route. So I'll leave it on the screen for you guys there to check out. I'll quickly answer some more questions, and then we'll come on to the last few slides, in particular a captaincy debate that I think is probably dead in the water if Haaland is starting, but it's worth noting who your alternative could be if we do get news that he isn't starting in that Man City team. So a guy saying, I'm planning on whether to sell Watkins for either Alvarez or Wilson. If I were to get either, who would I sell for? Who would I sell for? Well, you're saying you'll sell Watkins, so I think that answers your question there. In terms of which one you're buying, I would view it as this. Both minutes risks. You only buy Alvarez if we get news before the deadline that he is starting. If that's the case, I like him as a 1 week punt. Why I like Wilson a bit more is because you are getting him for game week 35 and a double in game week 36. Now again, similar to Alvarez, the minutes I cannot guarantee you, and that is the big caveat when you are selling someone like a Watkins whose minutes are absolutely guaranteed, for a player like Wilson or Alvarez whose minutes are very hard to predict. So tread carefully if you do sign either of those. I think Alvarez is an amazing 1 week punt if he's confirmed fit. Otherwise, Wilson is the better option, as I expect him to get minutes nonetheless over the next 2 game weeks, as he does have a second fixture on top of that in game week 36. And B0576 is saying, sold Grealish and Jota to Fernandes and Alvarez from game week 35. Is it a good move? I like the Fernandes move. Yes, Man United didn't look good against Brighton, and Fernandes didn't look his usual self. But against West Ham, I think there could be a potential for some okay returns there. I'm expecting a low-scoring game, but I like the moves between now and the end of the season, in particular if Alvarez does start. But of course, buying him without the information of him starting, there's always going to be a risk about that, but I don't mind it as a punt. And Popey saying, free transfer, Maddison, Saka to Rashford or roll. Really interesting one there, because I think Maddison is probably a sell. Leicester are a really hard team to predict right now, but Saka is somebody that I think is going to come back onto the radar very, very soon. His returns have been pretty poor recently, it is worth noting, but Arsenal have an away game against Newcastle, which we know is going to be a tough fixture. But then they have Brighton at home in 36, Nottingham Forest away in 37, and in 38 they have Wolves at home. Now, when we contrast that to Rashford has the away game against West Ham, Wolves at home in 36, double in 37, and he finishes the season at home against Fulham. So, yes, I do like the move selling to Rashford. I do think he is a brilliant option between now and the end of the season, and I would sell Maddison over Saka for that move. Would I do the move? That's the other question. And it's a really tricky one. Leicester's fixture, they have Fulham away. I'm expecting a low-scoring game there. Saka, on the other hand, could do bits against Newcastle, but are we expecting huge returns? Probably not. I wouldn't be expecting Arsenal to score 3 goals against Newcastle, for example. So I probably would roll and give yourself the flexibility to make a move in the following week and maybe target Man United when they have the more favourable fixture at home against Wolves rather than away against West Ham. As I do think West Ham have the tools available to frustrate Man United, it is worth noting. But if you view Rashford as an essential pick, maybe just get it done this week. But I like the opportunity of you having 2 free transfers in 36 and being flexible with your moves. Right, let's cover off the last bit, which is going to be captaincy. And then I think we're going to wrap up the live stream, guys. So make sure you're getting any more questions that you have in the chat, and I'll be answering them over the next 10 minutes. Okay, so here we have a bit of a captaincy debate. Let's get this up. Sorry, I was just checking a message there just to see if it was FPL related or not, as we know we're all obsessed. So, captaincy debate here. We've got Mo Salah, Haaland, and Kane. As I do view these probably the 3 best options this game week. However, as I've touched on in this live stream, I really do think that if Haaland is benched and Alvarez is starting, he is probably my captain this week based on my personal team. I think Alvarez is an amazing differential captaincy, but it's very much hinging on whether Haaland starts or not, and if we get any sort of team news. So, while we're discussing this, let's just do a quick rapid fire Q&A, a poll, just to get an idea on which one you would captain out of these 3. So game week 35 captain. This is going to come in the chat. So if you guys just do a quick yes or no. Salah, God, give me strength. I'm struggling here. Salah, Haaland, Kane. Who would you be going for? I am almost certain everybody's going to vote Haaland, but I'd be interested to know if somebody out there is maybe going a little bit different with their captaincy this week. So, first up, if Haaland starts and we get news that he is starting against his Leeds team, it's just incredibly hard to look past him. And I'm somebody that has swung against Haaland twice this season, and my rank has been absolutely decimated by him. So, we need to remember, it's against a Leeds team who do have Sam Allardyce in charge now. So, of course, we could see a little bit of a different Leeds. But this is also a team like Leeds who have only had Sam Allardyce in charge for a few days against the best team in arguably the world right now in Man City, and against probably the best forward in the world right now in Erling Haaland. I don't think we overcomplicate it. Look at his live ownership, 92%. If you get this one wrong, and you think Haaland isn't going to do well against this Leeds team, because I don't think Leeds have the tools available to put up a resolute defensive performance. I see the only way I can see Man City not scoring bags of goals against Leeds is just Man City not turning up and not looking their normal selves. I don't think Leeds have it in their locker to put up an incredible defensive performance against them. So it's going to be all down to just what are Man City doing on the day. But with Haaland in the team, most likely KDB getting minutes, that link-up is just too irresistible. And looking at his predicted points, looking at the expected goals conceded by Leeds at 1.64, it just feels like a match made in heaven this week, and a very brave manager to go against Erling Haaland. Now, if I was picking one or the other between Kane and Salah, I would be going Kane. Now, I know Salah is a midfielder, so he gets an extra point for a goal and a clean sheet, but one would argue that Salah's minutes could be a little bit at risk this week, having played so many over the last 5 game weeks. We could see maybe an early substitution for Salah, whereas Kane is played every minute. On penalties, the same as Salah, the same as most likely Haaland. But I really do like Kane in this fixture at home against Palace. I think Palace are going to be conceding goals in this game, and I think it could be quite free scoring. And I think Kane, as a differential captaincy, is the one that I would prefer. So if I had to rank these, I would have it as Haaland number 1. But of course, if we get team news that he's benched, my second choice would be Harry Kane. And my third choice would then be Mo Salah. But let me know in the poll which one you would go for. Early doors, I can see after 16 votes, 94% on Haaland, 6% on Mo Salah. So if you haven't voted already, make sure you do in the chat right now. There is a poll live as we speak. So we got a question here saying, from Shaquille saying, Jota to Wilson or Zinchenko to Stones or just roll? Okay, so you're in a position right now where, of course, Jota is a bit of a risk right now. But, of course, Wilson is a risk right now as well for minutes. Zinchenko to Stones, I do like if you don't have any Man City coverage. What would I do here? I probably prefer the Jota to Wilson / Isak move, depending on what kind of manager you are. Zinchenko to Stones feels like a nice move. Rolling. If you have the squad where Jota, if he doesn't play, you have a decent first sub, then rolling I think is a good move. Otherwise, I think Jota to a Newcastle forward is probably the route I would go for. Daryl saying, who's the best replacement for Grealish? Probably wouldn't sell him, mate. If you are in a position where your squad's looking really thin, and we do get news that Grealish is benched in game week 35, and you really can't see a time for you holding him, then I think the answer is there's no better option than Grealish between now and the end of the season at that price bracket over the next few weeks. So it's more about that 1 week punt. Maybe Grealish to Foden is the route to go for. If we get that team news and we hear that Foden's the one starting over Grealish, maybe just a sideways move to Foden is the route to go for. Otherwise, then it comes down to, do you have triple Brighton? If you don't, get yourself a Brighton midfielder or a second one. Then it comes down to, do you have Rashford? If not, get yourself Rashford. Then it comes down to, do you want to go for a punt? Then we start really scraping the barrel at some other options available. Tesla saying, Shaw, Dalot, Trippier, Robertson or White, who to start and who to bench? Well, it depends how many you're looking to actually start or bench out of that lot. Realistically, I would view it based on the fixtures in hand that they have. I would probably have Shaw over Dalot as a pick. So in terms of ranking, I would probably have Shaw over Dalot. I would have Trippier over Shaw. I would have Robertson over Trippier. And I would probably have Ben White at the bottom of the pile. So that's the way I'd rank him right now. Sokka saying, feel for you, my 2 captaincy punts against Haaland cost me 60 points. Will be top 10k without him. Yeah, I feel like I'd be in a very similar situation. I'm just looking at my rank here. If I just quickly get it up, I won't have it on screen for you, but I just want to get a bit of an understanding on when I went against Haaland and how it hurt me. So I had a really poor week in game week 3, where I went from 46k all the way to 125k. That was a really painful week. I don't actually know who hurt me in that week, but there certainly were some players in there that really ruined my rank, and I don't know who it was. Maybe some Man United players, but I believe it was in, let me just get it up for you right now. In game week 8, I believe it was. Where was it where he killed me? Game week 9. Game week 9, I went for Mo Salah as captain in his fixture against... I went for Mo Salah when he played against Brighton and he got 1 assist and he returned a 5-point haul against Haaland, who got a 23-point return and destroyed my rank. That was the game 6-3 against Man United. That there in itself, what did it do to my rank? It took me from 213k to 473k. Absolutely destroyed me. And yeah, massive pain in the team, really. So I have had scar marks ever since that day. Com saying De Bruyne needs minutes, and if Foden also plays, Haaland could haul big in the first half. Absolutely agree. And that's another reason why it's so hard to look past Erling Haaland. The only way you take the captaincy off him, in my eyes, is if there is a situation where he is benched. That is simply it. Matty's saying, midfield of Salah, March, Rashford, McAllister and Grealish, which four would you start? I think the question there is, which formation are you going for that requires you to bench one of those? Like, who are your three forwards that is getting in ahead of those midfielders? Because Salah, you have to start. March, an amazing fixture, and also got rested in the game against Man United, so I expect minutes for March. Rashford, very hard to look past because of his ownership. McAllister, same principle that I said about March. And Grealish could be a bench, and that might answer your question for you there if we do get a team leak before the deadline. But who is the forwards that you're starting above those midfielders? John saying Salah and Greenwood or Bruno and Steele. John, you have to put a bit more context into that question there, as I don't really know what the question is regards to. Is that about who you're buying, who you're selling? Let me know. And Sokhan's saying about game week 9 was the week where Haaland destroyed ranks, and that is exactly it. And just to give you an update on the captaincy, guys, 81% on Haaland, 14% on Salah, 5% on Harry Kane. That makes about sense, really. And Effie's saying, Brighton mids too much rotation and too difficult fixtures for double game week. Are they really essential for next game week? No, I don't think necessarily the fixtures make them essential. It's the double game weeks which make them essential. Yes, I agree, rotation could be prone amongst them, but Everton at home in game week 35, what a brilliant fixture that is. Then they are away against Arsenal and away against Newcastle in game week 36. But we need to remember, Brighton are the best team in the top 5 leagues for expected goals. So they're going to cause problems against any team that they face. And then they have a double in game week 37 at home against Southampton and at home against Man City. So I agree, the fixtures aren't good. In isolation, if we were just to ignore that they were doubles, and I said to you they're going away against Arsenal, away against Newcastle, home against Southampton, home against Man City, you'd argue there's only one good fixture there for them. But the value of them is amazing. And you're basically getting Everton, double. Very hard to ignore that. But I agree, there are probably better players out there, but are they going to outscore them in a double game week? That is the big question. Because you need to remember, if they just turn up in the fixtures, they get 2 points for appearances. So straight away, 4 points is basically their floor. And then you move from there if they get returns. And Pudge is saying, bench Grealish or Matoma. I'm doing 3-4-3 with Isak, Watkins and Haaland up front. Okay, so first and foremost, as I mentioned, if you're in that luxury position where maybe you're in the UK, 1:30 p.m. deadline, that suits you. If you can, tune into Twitter 15 minutes before. There is a solid chance that some of the big accounts will have Man City team leaks. If that is the case, you might get your answer just for you there, because Grealish may get benched, which is currently the common sort of thought process for a lot of people. However, if we get information that he starts, very difficult one there. Based on our projected points on Fantasy Football Fix, I'll just give you a bit of an idea on which player is leading the way. Let me get him up here on your screens. Grealish predicted to score 5.6, Matoma 4.9. So based on that, I probably would go for Grealish if we do get information that he is starting, and just hope that we do get that early team news. Right, guys, I think if we're getting no more questions, I think we might wrap it up there. We've been going for about an hour, and I've covered off all of the major topics that I wanted to cover off. We've discussed my team. I'm looking to roll the transfer, as I said, for those that have just joined late. Right now, rolling the transfer, but my situations are no Man City news, we roll. Haaland, option 2. Haaland benched. Alvarez starts. I will sell Watkins and I will buy Alvarez and put the captaincy on him. Option 3, Haaland and Alvarez start. Then I need to think about it, because I don't feel as inclined to get Alvarez if Haaland starting as well in the team. I just want Alvarez as that number 9 in the Man City team. And if that is the case, then I feel like I can't resist him if he is on his own up front and Haaland is on the bench. So let's end the live stream there, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you can drop a like on the way out, it would be always much appreciated. Thank you again, Cheekster, for moderating the chat. Always appreciated. Thank you again for being involved. And thanks to everyone else. Hopefully we do have some green arrows this week. And I will see you in the next video. Take care, guys, and have a fantastic bank holiday.